Good morning, good afternoon, good evening to East Central Missouri and the world, and welcome to the James Strong Show podcast number 277. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for making us a part of your day. I appreciate it. This podcast was recorded on the morning of Saturday, July the 23rd, from the James Strong Studio in Western St. Charles County. Podcast today, staying optimistic during pessimistic times. You're scratching your head saying, well, what the heck is he going to talk about this for? Well, every time you turn on the television, you turn on the radio, you open a newspaper, whether it be on your phone or the old style with a paper, physical paper, it's bad news and worse. We're going into a recession. Inflation is eating up our savings. We're not going to be able to retire, so security is going broke. Russia's winning the war in the Ukraine. Europe is going to freeze to death because they're not going to have natural gas. You read it, and it's bad news. Bad news, bad news, bad news, bad news. However, you can't live your life pessimistic. You've got to find the silver lining in that dark cloud. You've got to find a way to, as the Brits say, what is it? Carry on. But staying positive in pessimistic times is difficult. We're going to talk about that. I'm going to talk about some of the things that I ran into on my business trip this week that were head scratchers, how I managed them. And the purpose of this podcast is not to sit you down, pat you on the head, and explain to you how to do things. The purpose of this podcast today is to show a snapshot in time, things that I've stumbled upon, ways that I'm attempting to deal with them, and possibly, hopefully, you can take those similar things in your life, apply them, and put a smile on your face. That's the hope anyway. But before we get into that, I did want to give an update on the podcast. One of the things that people ask me quite often is, well, how's the podcast going? I said, well, do you listen to it? They say, yeah. I said, do you like it? They say, sure. I said, well, then the podcast is going fine. But they want to know about it. And the subscription service that I use, Spreaker, which is now part of iHeartRadio. iHeartRadio bought them. And I've used Spreaker for years and years and years now. That's who hosts my podcasts. So I record them here in the studio or remotely, however I do them. I upload them to Spreaker, then they distribute them. Then other people distribute them after they've been distributed, but that's another story for another day. But I also get statistics, and they tell me who's listening, how are they listening, where are they listening from. And I thought I would share some statistics with you folks, because people ask me all the time, hey, how many people listen to the show? Who does? Why do they? When do they? So I have some of those numbers. I'll go ahead and share them with you. And these are numbers over the last 12 months. Okay, over 11,000 downloads. Okay, 238 listenable episodes. Now, what is a listenable episode? That's an episode that I've recorded. A podcast, okay? This is podcast number 277. So there are 277 James Strong Show podcasts that I've done. Of course, that doesn't include the radio shows, the Good Life shows, the other stuff that I've done in the past. But of the podcasts that I've been doing over the past several years, 5 years I've been doing these podcasts, a little more than that, 277 of them have been done. 138 are available at Spreaker.com. What are the most popular? Well, that's what I wanted to know that, okay? And that actually was probably the most interesting of the bunch. Now, I'm going to go ahead and list the 10 most popular podcasts of the last 12 months. Okay. And by popular, I mean how many people actually downloaded these. I can't tell who listened to them per se, but I can tell who downloaded them. In fact, that's one of the reasons why I always say, download it and listen to it at your leisure. at the end of the podcast, because I can track the number of people who download the podcast. Can't listen to the number of listeners, okay? For example, if you download the podcast, then pass the link on to somebody else, and they listen to it, that doesn't count as a statistic. Now, I'm not saying this so that, make sure you download every time and make sure that you do this and do that. I'm not really, the numbers are interesting, but I'm not looking to build numbers. I am looking to build numbers, build listenership, but I'm not necessarily trying to jump these download numbers up. So do it this way, not that way. Continue to do things the way you want, okay? I do this podcast so that people can listen to it and smile, okay? So I don't want you to change the way you do things just so my dopey numbers look better, okay? But the last 12 months, the most popular podcasts of them all, 6 of them were podcasts that I did all by myself. 4 of them were podcasts where I had a guest. So I'm thinking, okay, what's the most popular format? One where I had a guest, or one where I did the podcast just me, a solo act? A little bit of both. 60% solo, 40% guests. So about 50-50, okay? The most popular podcast was the one I did with Luis Elizondo. It was a UFO podcast, okay? Luis Elizondo, Charlatan or Hero. The second most popular podcast that I've had. And now, granted, most of these, in fact, almost all of these are older podcasts. And let me explain why. Because these are over the last 12 months, okay? So if a podcast has been around for 4 weeks, you only have an opportunity to download it and listen to it for 4 weeks. Some of these podcasts are months and months old. In fact, if I look at my statistics of what have been downloaded just this week alone, I've had 2 podcasts from 2018 that have been downloaded. One was my interview with Colin Shoei. Shoot, that was in 2018. Two people downloaded that this week. One person downloaded my podcast I did as a tribute to Art Bell when he died about 4.5 years ago. So the last 12 months, that's what these statistics are about. So they're going to be podcasts that were at least done months ago, not weeks ago. Okay. Number 1, Luis Elizondo. Number 2, the Vote Matt podcast that I did about 6 months ago. And Vote Matt is a guy. He's in South Carolina. He's a podcaster. That was a successful podcast. It was the second most downloaded podcast of all. Number 3, Jerome Koenigsfeld and the Headhunters of Borneo. Number 4, the ZZ Top You Never Knew. And I've been doing some of that, some of the old rockers, doing a biop on them. Yeah, we like their music. Yeah, we know what they look like, but we don't know the backstory. The ZZ Top You Never Knew. That came in at number 4. Number 5, the Argument for Conspiracy Theories. Remember I did that podcast about 8 months ago about conspiracy theories? Here's a conspiracy theory. Here's what they're all about. Here's why we like them. Here's why we don't. That was number 6. I'm sorry, that was number 5. Number 6, another Jerome Koenigsfeld podcast. Jerome Koenigsfeld and his Central American Adventure. Number 7, the podcast I did on Nazi war criminals. People found that very interesting. Lots of downloads. Number 8, Talking Radio with the Gray Falcon. James Gray Falcon was a guest on, and we talked about just the radio industry, how things are, how things were, what we looked at the future of radio being, and that was number 8. Number 9 was a split podcast. We talked about the Tic Tac UFOs and the Steve Winwood You Never Knew. So I scratched my head. I was like, why is that one so popular? Was it because they liked the UFOs? Because they liked Steve Winwood? Maybe a combination of both. And number 10 was How to Survive a Pit Bull Attack. That was back in December when I was minding my own business, walking through a park, and a pit bull attacked me and darn near killed me. Okay, that was number 10. As I look at these, I'm thinking there's no rhyme or reason. Okay, UFO ones were popular. The podcast with guests, Jerome Konigsfeld and his adventures were popular. My podcast with the Gray Falcon, when we talked about radio, which is kind of what I'm doing here, that was very popular. Nazi war criminals, that's not UFO stuff, but it's kind of out there too, okay? And actually, I think the Nazi war criminals, I actually talked about the the Nazis and their link to UFOs as well. But I found those very interesting. I thought you would too. Listeners, no surprise, 90% of all listeners to the James Strong Show come from the United States of America. No surprise there at all. Other countries, the number one country, not England, not Canada, not Mexico. The number one country that's not the U.S., where I have listeners to the James Strong Show, India. 3.5% of all people who listen to the James Strong Show are from India, primarily, probably almost exclusively, using the GeoSavan app. The United States, 90%, 40% of them from the state of Missouri, where I'm from here. No surprise there. 14% New York State, 13% Illinois, 5% California, 4% Arkansas, and then basically every other state in the union represented as well. Where do listeners go to pick up the James Strong Show podcast? What's their source? Okay. Where do they listen? Apple Podcasts, number one. 29% of all people who listen to the James Strong Show, who download the James Strong Show, download or listen to it off of the Apple Podcast app. Spreaker, 27%. TuneIn, 12%. Spotify, 10%. GeoSavan, 3.5%. 3.5% of the listeners are from India. 3.5% of the downloads are from GeoSavan. No surprise there. iHeartRadio, 3%, which you would think that should be higher, but maybe not, because Spreaker is part of iHeartRadio, so I don't know how they break that up. And then there's other ones. CastBox, 3% of all people use the CastBox app. And there's others as well. There's Bullhorn, there's Google Podcasts, there's Alexa Media, there's iTunes, which I thought that was Apple, but maybe not. Pocket Casts, Amazon Music, Audible.com, Firefox, VLC, Podbean, Android browser, and there's others as well. So at the end of the show, I say, and get it wherever you get your podcasts. Wherever you get it, it's there, okay? I think the only exception is SoundCloud, because SoundCloud wants me to pay to put more than 3 podcasts on their site. Everybody and their dad does it for free. SoundCloud wants to charge me money. Sorry, SoundCloud, you lose. Now, here's the most interesting part. It's really not surprising, but it's interesting. What is the device that most people use to listen to the James Strong Show podcast? 86% of you are listening to it on your phone. No surprise there. Because as I've said it before, podcasts to me, it's radio, okay? But it's radio where you're doing something else while you're listening to the podcast. I'm sure there are people who turn on their phone, put it in front of them, stare at the phone, and listen to the podcast. There probably are people that do that, but almost nobody does. When I listen to a podcast, I assume this is how most people listen to a podcast. You're doing something else. Radio, podcasting being one of the, being radio as well. Remember, radio, the media form, not the device. Radio is a passive. Listening to a podcast, radio, it's passive. It's not active. You're doing something else while you're listening to the podcast. You're driving a car. You're working in the yard. You're maybe you're at work doing something else and it's in the background. You're taking a walk. You're exercising. You're just relaxing. You're doing something else, okay, while you're listening to the podcast. So 86% of all people listen to the podcast are listening to it on their phone. 7% listen on their desktop. And I would guess that a lot of times that would be people that are at work. They put it on their desktop, they minimize it, and they continue to work on their desktop while they're listening to the podcast. 5% on their tablets, which is probably about the same thing. And then there's other people who listen to it on other ways, smart speakers, Alexa speakers, that type of thing. But 86% of all people who listen to the James Strong Show podcast listen on their phones. That, my friends, is how things have changed in many ways, which is what this podcast is about. How to stay optimistic during pessimistic times, because folks, things have certainly changed. I'm a glass half full guy, but sometimes to say that it's difficult to be glass half full, sometimes that's an understatement. And this week's business trip, kind of tells that story in spades. This was a trip where it was a driving trip, and I had to see people in southern Missouri and in Kentucky and then into Ohio. So it didn't make any sense to fly. Plus, a ticket from St. Louis to Cincinnati is very expensive, which is southern Ohio is where more primarily I needed to see people. But I could drive on the way, see other people as well, and save some money. Okay, over 1,000 miles on the car, lots of time behind the windshield. But travel has become challenging. Now, all the COVID restrictions are off, okay? People aren't even talking about COVID. No place is making me wear a mask. Most of the hotels will say something along the lines, look, you don't need to wear a mask. You don't have to wear a mask, but we kind of would like you to if you're not vaccinated, okay? That type of thing, all right? So the COVID stuff is done. But the excuse for poor service and high prices is still COVID. Let me give you an example. I'm a big fan of Hilton and the Hilton properties. I'm a lifetime diamond member. They send me gifts, okay? That's how much money I spend with the Hilton people. I like them. They're good. Their service is good. Their product is good. Their people are friendly. But I will tell you, they have slipped, and they slipped big time. Now, I got it when they slipped during the COVID times because you couldn't fill the hotel up. You had to cut back because you had to make some money. I get it. But that ship has sailed, and you're still using the same lame excuses. Let me give you a couple of examples. I stayed in a property one night called True by Hilton, okay? It's a newer type of concept. It's like a Euro hotel where you have a tiny room, no real furniture, modular boxes to put your stuff in. But it's hip, it's different, it's for the younger crowd, and it's fine. But here was my problem. In fact, I smiled. I walked in, they had the big sign above the breakfast buffet when I checked in that evening. And, of course, the breakfast buffet wasn't up, but there was the sign. And there was a space where they put, and it said, bagels, English muffins, donuts. I thought, ooh, there we go. I get a donut in the morning. Made me smile, went to bed. Woke up the next morning, came down to breakfast. And right underneath that sign were bagels, English muffins, but no donuts. Folks, why would you put a sign out there saying, hey, we have donuts in the morning, and then don't do it? Why would you do that? COVID. Stop with the COVID. They still make donuts. You didn't want to put donuts out there because you're too damn cheap to open up your wallet and give the people what you advertised. Shame on you. Here's the other one. I went to, in fact, this has been all Hilton properties for a long time now. One of my routines is in the morning, they have oatmeal. I take oatmeal, I put some peanut butter in with the oatmeal, maybe some nuts, maybe some fruit, mix it up. There's my breakfast. No peanut butter at Hilton property places anymore. And I've asked them. They said, we can't get peanut butter because it's all been recalled. What? No, all peanut butter has not been recalled. Don't lie to me. Don't tell me the peanut butter has been recalled. Because you can go to any grocery store and buy peanut butter. Any grocery store will sell you peanut butter. You don't want to put peanut butter out there because it costs you money. So they just took out the peanut butter. What are you doing? That's okay. No donuts, no peanut butter. They don't clean your room anymore. So they've lowered the rates, right? No. I paid $171 a night for a Hampton Inn that I eat that I have spent maybe $120, $130 for in the past. This is in an area, a nicer area of Cincinnati, a industrial area that is generally a little higher than most. But $171 a night, and you don't have peanut butter, okay? And you're not going to clean my room because, COVID. And you don't have peanut butter because, COVID. What are you doing? What are you doing? Number 3 son and his family went on vacation a week or two ago. They stayed in, I want to say it was a Hampton Inn. Maybe it was a Hilton Garden Inn. I don't know. It was a Hilton property. And one of the advantages that I get as a Hilton Diamond member is I can pass my Diamond membership on to a family member for a year. So I give it to number 3 son. Him and his family go on vacation. So when he checks into this hotel, for all intents and purposes, they see him as a Diamond member. That is the highest, elite, greatest thing you can get if you're a Hilton Honors member. Diamond is as high as it gets. It does not get any higher. They saw this, and they checked into the hotel on the way down to Florida. And by the way, they were going to check back on the same hotel on the way back because it takes them 2 days to get to Florida. They have a small child. The room was filthy. And I don't mean just, okay, you could have ran the vacuum a little bit better. I mean, there was trash on the table still, filthy. And Hilton has a guarantee. At least they used to have a guarantee. They've taken the signs down, so maybe that guarantee is gone. Look, if you're not happy, we'll give you your money back. They said, look, the room is filthy. We're not happy. Give me our money back. They said, we can't do that. What do you mean you can't do that? Well, because it's too much of a hassle. Yeah, well, it was too much of a hassle for you to clean the room too, okay? But they gave him some points. They said, look, we guarantee it will be better on your way back at the end next week. Because they told him, look, we're coming back to the same hotel. We better not have the same problem. Well, they came back, and it was the same problem. They said, we don't have anybody to clean rooms. Sorry. There's trash on the tables. You didn't even attempt to clean this room. And the excuse that they used at the front desk was 2 excuses. First of all, we don't have enough people to clean rooms. We only have 2 people that clean rooms. Number 2 is, and this is what the person at the front desk said, look, I'm sorry, but nobody here gives an F. That's really what they told my son and daughter-in-law. Well, they ended up, somebody came in, they took off the trash, they wiped things down with a wet wipe and considered that a clean room. They looked at the bed sheets, they looked clean, so maybe they were clean, maybe they weren't, I don't know. But that's Hilton, folks. That's Hilton. Hilton has always been the best service, the best conditions. You pay a little bit more, but that's okay because you get a little bit more. You pay a little bit more and you get a lot more. That's what I've experienced. Recently, that ship has sailed. Number 2, Enterprise. St. Louis company, formed by Jack Taylor, a World War II vet who has since died, and the company has changed. The last 3 cars I've gotten from Enterprise, one of them I picked it up in Milwaukee. I had to exchange it in Green Bay because it had warning lights that kept coming on. I'm not going to drive a car with warning lights. A warning light says, hey, don't drive this car. But that's how they gave it to me. The car before, the second to last car I drove, it was a Nissan Kicks made in China. Biggest piece of crap I've ever driven. This car, every time I turned the wheel, it sounded like somebody had thrown gravel into the steering box. And every time I put on the brakes, it sounded like the brakes were going to just fall apart. The car was a piece of junk. Now, it had 65,000 miles on it. So they're not buying new cars. This last car I had was in fact, the car I had this week, I had to put over 1,000 miles on it, was a Kia Optima. And it was fine, except for the tires. Something was wrong with the tires because I had to turn the radio up louder than I normally would because you could just hear the tires going whoomp, 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 whoomp. This car had 50,000 miles on it. Now, when I turned the car in, here's what they always say at Enterprise. In fact, the second last time, the Milwaukee trip, it was awful. It was terrible. And They always want to get a 10. Hey, was everything great, sir? When I turned in the Nissan with my with my trip a time or so ago, I said, no, it wasn't great. This car was, it sounds bad. It's this, it's that. You need to have this car looked at. It's got 65,000 miles on it. You're not maintaining this car. I felt threatened when I drove it. I was afraid it wasn't going to make it back to the airport. He said, other than that, was everything okay? And would you give us a 10? And I was exhausted. I said, yeah, sure. So he smiled because he got his effing 10. Okay. That didn't happen this time. This time I turned the car in. Well, sir, how is everything? And this is with people in the lobby. Okay. I said, well, since you asked, and I unloaded, I said, this car had a terrible road noise. It was hard to think the whop, whop, whop of the wheels going down the road. I said, now it had 50,000 miles on it, which is a lot for a rental car. But somebody didn't take care of this car. They gave me a car that shouldn't have been on the road, and I had to drive it over 1,000 miles. He said, oh, well, that's just how things are because we can't get cars. And I said, really? You charge me $100 a day for this car. You used to charge me $40 a day for cars. So you can't get cars. Translation, you're not spending money on new cars, yet you double the rate. Why is that? His excuse was, well, we can't help that. Those rates are set by corporate. I said, you've got enterprise on your shirt. It is your fault. Why don't you maintain the cars if you're raising the rates and can't get new ones? Well, we can't control that either. I mean, we take it to Firestone, and if they don't fix it right, what can we do? I said, again, it's got enterprise on your shirt. You should be doing this, okay? You keep pointing the finger. He said, well, is there anything I can do to make you happy? I said, no, you gave me a bad car and I'm turning it in. I said, look, the next time I rent a car, I'm going to rent it from you people. Well, can I give you some money back? I said, no, that's not, you're not listening to me. You're not listening to me. The car you gave me, in fact, the last 3 cars I've rented from you people were not looked at. They weren't gone over. They shouldn't have been given to somebody to drive. All right. Okay. So he then, I was doing something else, and then he mentioned to me, hey, if I do this for you, will you give me a 10? And gave me 2 thumbs up. And I just looked at him. You still want your stupid 10, even though I just lambasted you and your company. And here was the worst thing. Here was the most damning thing about enterprise leasing or enterprise rental car. After all that went on, the guy took my car, drove it, because I was in the rental car center waiting for my wife to pick me up. She was going to pick me up and take me home. So I had to wait for about 20 minutes. They took my car, ran it through the car wash, and parked it to rent to the next guy. You didn't listen to a word I said. I just told you this car is not drivable. You need to look at it. You had 18 reasons as to why it wasn't your fault. Bottom line is you should have taken that car out of the mix and had somebody look at it because I told you it's not drivable. There's something wrong with the tires. You didn't listen to me at all. You did not listen to me at all. You took that car and you washed it and you parked it and you prepared it for the next guy to have the same problem. To me, that's unexcusable. That's indefensible. That's just, you suck big time. Now, I would, if I could go someplace else, I would, but everybody's the same way. Starbucks. I love Starbucks. Now, a lot of you out there, they're a bunch of liberals. Well, shut up with the liberal stuff. Starbucks makes good coffee, some of the best coffee out there. The people are always kind. They're always nice. I enjoy going into a Starbucks, and you pay a little bit more. You know what? You do pay more at Starbucks. First of all, I don't get a half a cup of latte with whipped cream and Jell-O shots in it. I get black coffee, sometimes with a little bit of cream in it. That's it. Okay. And it does cost a bit more than other places, but the people are kind. The coffee is good. The product is good. I like Starbucks. They're shutting down some Starbucks stores. And I say good for them. Here's why they're shutting them down. Because the workers don't feel safe working in some of these stores. Now, when I first heard this story, I thought, oh, here's all these snowflakes. I don't feel safe. Well, here's why they don't feel safe. Because Starbucks stopped closing down their bathrooms a while back because they were closing down bathrooms, and then some people say, well, you're closing down bathrooms because you're racist. You won't let me use the bathroom because I'm black. No, we didn't let you use the bathroom because you weren't a customer, okay? But then they said, okay, bathrooms are open to everybody. Then the homeless used them for bathtubs, and then they started closing them again. Well, some Starbucks in less than primo areas are used for drug deals. They're used as places for the homeless to get out of the cold or out of the heat. They're used for retributes to hang around in. And the people don't feel safe. They doing drugs in the Starbucks store. And I don't mean by drinking caffeine doing drugs. I mean people shooting heroin in a Starbucks store. Okay. And being abusive to the baristas when they say, hey, you can't do that here. F you, watch me. And then in many places like Seattle or Los Angeles, if you call the police will do nothing. They will do nothing. So Starbucks says, that's it. We're not submitting our workers to this baloney. Shut them down. Good for them. Dave Chappelle. You know who he is? He's a comedian, okay? Dave Chappelle is a comedian, funny guy. I personally like Dave Chappelle. I don't like all of his material. Some of his material is I just don't care for it, but that's okay. The vast majority of his material is so good, you wait for the bad stuff because you're going to get more real good stuff in the future. He's one of my favorite comedians. Had a show canceled this week at the First Avenue venue in Minneapolis, St. Paul's. And here's why they said they canceled him. And I'm going to read this. And this just tells you how things totally suck. And this is this is a quote from First Avenue venue. It says, to staff, artists, and our community, we hear you and we are sorry. The statement reads, we know we must hold ourselves, and this is because they canceled Dave Chappelle at the last minute, and they moved him to a lesser venue. We know we must hold ourselves to the highest standards, and we know we let you down. We are just not a black box with people in it, and we understand that First Avenue is not just a room, but meaningful beyond our walls. And the statement continues. The First Avenue team and you have worked hard to make our venues the safest spaces in the country, and we will continue with that mission. We believe in diverse voices and the freedom of artistic expression, but in honoring that, we lost sight of the impact that this would have. Chappelle's show. We know that there are some who do not agree with this decision. You're welcome to send feedback. Now, the reason they were upset is because Dave Chappelle has made jokes about the trans community in sets over the years. And people don't like it. In fact, one of his comedy routines, he dubbed the team TERF, T-E-R-F. And that's the term for trans exclusionary radical feminists. And he was lambasted for that. And here's what Dave Chappelle said that upset the people. Gender is a fact, Chappelle said during his Netflix special, which was nominated for 2 Emmy Awards, actually. Gender is a fact. Every human being in this room, every human being on earth had to pass through the legs of a woman to be on earth. That's a fact. And he was canceled for that. It is a fact, folks. And by the way, he's a comedian. He pokes fun at people. That's what they do. And when First Avenue said, we believe in diverse voices and the freedom of artistic expression. No, you don't. No, you don't. If you had, you would let Dave Chappelle express his opinion artistically and freely. But you didn't. You shut him down. To me, that's just crap and BS. Now, if you don't like Dave Chappelle, Don't listen to his routine. There's a comedian out there. Her name is Nikki Glaser, and she's from St. Louis, and she's very popular. And she's from St. Louis. I thought, you know what? I was scanning the dial on the television this week, and I stumbled upon her HBO special. And I watched it, or at least I tried to. I watched probably, 25 minutes of it. 25, no, not even that much. Probably 5 minutes of it, or maybe even less than that. And the main reason I turned it off was because she wasn't funny. Now, what was Nikki Glaser talking about? Nikki Glaser is a 40-ish, not unattractive blonde gal who was dressed fairly provocatively on stage, okay? And she was talking about, going into great detail about how can I put this so that Brad can still play this on his radio station, how she pleasures a man with her mouth, okay? And she went into great detail as to how she did that. Then she went into great detail about how a man pleasures her with his mouth. And I thought to myself, okay, I don't want to hear this. It's not funny to me. Pardon me. I was embarrassed, and I'm not a prude, and there was nobody else in the room. I thought, you know what, Nikki Glaser, I'm not going to listen to you. You're not funny. I'm turning you off. Now, do I think Nikki Glaser should be banned from any comedy club or venue? No. I'm just not going to pay money to see her. If you don't like what Dave Chappelle says, don't pay money to see him. Do I think Nikki Glaser needs to be banned? No. Then why would you even ban Dave Chappelle? Politicians, once again, politicians the same way. If you listen to the GOP or the Democrats, one sucks worse than the next. Every GOP running for office out there, and we have a primary coming up in a couple of weeks, every politician says, we need to take our country back. Every GOP politician running for office, we need to take our country back. Hey, dimbulb, nobody took your country. Stop playing that stupid game. Nobody took your country. And the Democrats, first of all, Democrats don't get elected out here. Only Republicans. But Democrats, they all want to share the wealth. And by the way, that's why nobody elects you, because you're telling the base out there, you're telling the people out there, the vast majority of the people in this part of the state of Missouri are hardworking people who are trying to make a living. And you're saying, hey, stop being so selfish and give your money away to those who are clueless. Nobody's going to elect you, okay? So they just suck. Now, things change. I get it. I understand. I lived through the transition from the greatest generation to the boomers, and I watched things change. We are now in the process of moving from the boomers to the millennials and the Gen X's, okay? But this is a new level of service, or lack of it, this transition that I've not seen. And the biggest thing is intolerance of others. I will tell you this, when we moved from the greatest generation to the boomers, tolerance was a big deal. Women were admitted into the workforce. Minorities were accepted into the workforce. People just kind of understood that, hey, do your own thing. And maybe that was a hippie thing, I don't know. But a lot of tolerance was introduced from the greatest generation to the boomers. I don't see that now. I see a lot of intolerance of others. I see selfishness. I see extremism in many cases. And folks, when it comes to that stuff, I'm out. O-U-T. Now, the new generation is quite different than mine in many ways. Not all bad, not good, or not all good, not all bad, but certainly different, okay? And here's an example. Movies. Once upon a time in the 60s or 70s, I guess, I went to see most movies. I was a movie aficionado. I saw them all. I can count the number of great movies I've seen, new movies that is, that have come out in the last 10 years, 5 years, 10 years, probably 10 years. I can count them on one hand. But then I'm not the target audience. I'm not 18 to 54, okay? So they're not making movies for me. And it's obvious, very evident, because I don't like them. And here's a perfect example of how things have changed with the movies, okay? This is the best example I can think of. I had a conversation last week with my oldest son, who's a very bright young man, very bright. On a scale of 1 to 10, when it comes to smarts, he's up there around a 10, a whole lot smarter than his old man, okay? Bright person. So, he's very, very, he knows what's going on in the world, okay? And I brought up the name, just in passing, Richard Burton. We're talking about movies. I brought up Richard Burton. With a straight face, he looked at me and he said, "Who's Richard Burton?" He had never heard of Richard Burton. He's 37 years old. And he had never heard of Richard Burton. That, my friend, is a generational thing. If you've never heard of Richard Burton when it comes to movies, then you're on a different planet than me. I brought this up before, even James Bond films. James Bond films were my favorite genre of films. Still are, but not the last ones. The last good James Bond film that I've seen that I can say, wow, I really like that a lot, was Casino Royale, the first Daniel Craig. Since then, they've gotten worse and worse and worse, and the last one was almost unwatchable to me. And I've told you, here's where they lost me. When they did a fight scene where Bond and a very sexy, scantily clad agent were fighting the bad guys. Well, first of all, it looked like something out of the Matrix. It was all done with CGI. I thought, that's stupid. What are you doing this for? This isn't a comic book film. Don't do it this way. But that's how things are done. Okay, that's fine. And at the end of the film, what Bond normally would do is look at the gal, smile, and they'd jump in the sack. But they didn't do that. Instead, he smiled, held out her hand, shook her hand, and said, "It's a pleasure working with you." What the hell is that? Now, you may call me a sexist misogynist to think that, well, what he should have done is just taken her in the back and banged her. But that's what Bond does. Not anymore, he doesn't. And once again, I'm out. Now, you've heard me rant and rave and bitch and complain. Remember, the glass is half full, right? How do you do this? Well, here's how I've at least attempted to do a glass half full thing. Hilton and Enterprise, okay? I can't go anywhere else because they're just all going to be just as bad. But here's what I do. One thing that businesses understand and this new generation understands is bad reviews. They give me a 10. F you, you're not getting a 10. You're getting a 2. That's all you get. You suck. And they listen to that. Maybe it'll pay dividends. Maybe it won't. I shop where I get value. Okay? And by value, I don't mean cheap. Sometimes it means cheap, but it means value. Okay? I do the vast majority of my shopping at Costco, Aldi, and Walmart. And here's why. Because Costco, Aldi, and Walmart give me the stuff that I want at the right price. Now, Walmart is a sideshow. I hate going into Walmart, but I found a workaround for that too. Go at 6 or 7 o'clock in the morning. The dregs of society are still sleeping. You don't have anybody to deal with. Okay? And actually, last time I went to a Walmart at 7 o'clock in the morning, here's what I did with the stuff that I bought. I walked up to a cash register, and a cash register attendant took my order right there because there was no line and paid for it. When's the last time that happened at a Walmart? Go early in the morning with the old people. It works out that way. I eat where I get good value, okay? I mentioned before, like with coffee, okay? Starbucks. I love Starbucks coffee. It's not cheap at all, but it's good value because you get a really good cup of coffee. Now, I've heard, well, it costs $8 for a cup of coffee at Starbucks. No, it doesn't, because what you got is a chocolate milkshake with caffeine in it. That's not coffee. I don't know what they call them anymore. The medium size, like a 16-ounce coffee with cream in it, half and half at Starbucks. It's going to be like $2.35, okay? Is that a little bit more than you pay elsewhere? It is, but it's really good. Okay. And it's half and half, not non-dairy creamer. It's real half and half. So I get good value from Starbucks. I get good value for coffee at Circle K. Circle K, you can get a cup of coffee for just over $1. And they've got real half and half. You got to make it yourself. But I go to Circle K gas stations of all places for coffee. Good value. 2 times I went to a restaurant in Cincinnati called Aladdin's. It's a Lebanese restaurant. They have fresh pita, fresh hummus. They have a garlic sauce you mix in with your hummus. It's amazing. Tabbouleh salad. I had a Syrian salad with chicken one time. I had a beef shawarma pita wrap, which is amazing. My bill for dinner was $20, 24 with tip. And the food was amazing. Amazing food for a reasonable price. I went there twice. I go to those types of restaurants. If they give you good value, smile at you when you come in, give you amazing food, where you walk out of the place where you think, wow, I'm glad I went there. That's who I go to. That's who gets my money. I listen to what I like on the media sources. Okay. It may seem simple, it may seem obvious, but let me explain. I watch almost no television. In fact, we still have cable TV service here at the house, but that's because my wife wants to watch baseball games. Okay. She's my wife. She's my partner. I'm going to give her what she wants. Okay. But if it were up to me, I'd just turn the television off, because the only time I watch television, I'll watch an occasional baseball game because she wants to watch it. I'll watch Jeopardy with her. She wants me to sit down and watch Jeopardy with her and do the quizzes, and I enjoy doing that with my wife. And I'll occasionally watch a movie on Turner Classic Movies. That's it. When I was on the road, I told you I flipped the stations and stumbled upon that comedian, Nikki Glaser, watched her for about 5 minutes. And I watched the back end of a PBS special that was on about some photographers who were camping in just north of Las Vegas in the Valley of Fire. Camping in the desert. Sure, I'm going to watch that. But that was it. 3 days, that's all I watched in 3 days. Totally, I had that television on for less than an hour. I like to listen to a lot of radio. And when I say radio, I mean the media source. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I listen to old music stations. You can scan the dial on a radio in a car when you're driving. And again, when I drive 1,000 miles a week, sometimes you spend a lot of butt time in a car. A lot of oldie stations. So the old music, I'll listen to that. Okay. Because I was in southern Indiana or southern Ohio and Indiana, WLW 700 AM. It's an old style station in Cincinnati. Been around for a long time. Big 50,000 watt signal. You can get it in St. Louis at nighttime. Okay, 700 AM. Give it a shot. But this is a bunch of old crotchety white men who are on the show. It's a talk show. Not particularly conservative. Some of it kind of is, but not stupid conservative. Just a bunch of old crotchety white men making jokes that really aren't politically correct, but that's their audience. I enjoy it. It's harmless. They're not hurting anybody, and they make me smile. So I listen to what I like. I watch what I like. And if I don't like it, I'm not watching your dopey stuff. Sell that to somebody else. I talk about politicians. Folks, I vote third party a lot. A couple election cycles ago, in fact, when Trump ran the first time, so I guess it was 2020? No, 2016. I determined that's it. I'm not holding my nose and voting for the lesser of two evils anymore. Don't do it. If you want my vote, you've got to earn it. And few have. So I vote for the third party. Now, I do as much as I want as possible. I do my own thing. There's 24 hours in a day and you got to sleep 8. Okay. The other 16, I got the day job. Okay. But the rest of the time, I'm doing what I want. I work on that old dopey Jaguar. Okay. Which one of these days will be back to me so I can do my own thing. Don't know when that's going to be. It's, as I said before, it's way late and way over budget, but that's another story for another day. I enjoy my other cars. I enjoy my Saturn Sky Redline, which will be 14 years old in September. I just like messing with my old cars. It's fun. Summertime, the trophy wife has a pool in her backyard, and because I maintain it, she lets me swim in it. That's a lot of fun. I enjoy doing this podcast. This podcast is tons of fun. I like it. It's fun. I enjoy doing this. I enjoy the feedback from you, dear listeners. It's a lot of fun. I enjoy fine wine. Now, you're going to roll your eyes. Okay, Mr. Moneybags, here you are with your stupid fine wine stuff. Let me explain what I mean by fine wine. Okay. Earlier today, I posted a picture on Facebook. Two of my favorite wines. They're fantastic. There's an Epicuro Primitivo. Primitivo grape is in Europe, they call Zinfandel grape, they call it a Primitivo. Okay. And that's from Italy. And I also have a picture of a Malbec from the Mendoza region of Argentina. The Epicuro Primitivo I get at Trader Joe's. The Mendoza Malbec I get at Costco. Both of those wines are $6.99 a bottle. Friends, I've had $50 bottles of wine, $100 bottles of wine, $200 bottles of wine. I've had them, okay? And are they better than this? I guess, yeah, but not that much better. They're really not, okay? I've told this story before. I popped in a bottle of Opus One, which is supposed to be arguably the best wine in the world. I bought a bottle. I popped it. It was good, but not that good. So let me think. Should I get a bottle of Opus One, or shall I get 2 cases of Epicuro Primitivo? Guess what I'm buying next time, folks? Okay. I enjoy that kind of fine wine. You can get a lot of good wines under $10 a bottle. Under $20 a bottle, tons of good wine, tons of fantastic wines for under $20 a bottle. Some very good wines, like these two, $6.99 a bottle. Don't take my word for it. That's why I posted the picture. Go to Costco. Go to Trader Joe's. Pick up a bottle each. And if you don't like it, let me know, and we'll have a discussion. One of these days, when the day job is finished, I'm going to go to school and become a sommelier, a wine expert. Now, why am I going to do that? I already have an opinion on wine. Why is that going to change? Well, because I want to educate myself so I can speak from a place of knowledge, not just opinion. So I can become a true wine expert, not just not opine on wine, but be an expert. As we get older, think about this. As we get older, our obligations wane. Children grow up. You don't have to take care of them anymore. The mortgage is done. Student loans are done, yours and your kids. So you have more money. You have more free money to spend because you don't have to spend on obligations. You can spend it where you want, and and we do have it. Okay, us older folks do have it. 18 to 54, they don't want our money. That's okay. We don't want to give it to them. So let's make everybody happy. You're not interested in taking it, and I'm not interested in giving it to you. So there's no conflict here, is there? And let me tell you about the older folks that have the money. Here's a case in point. Bruce Springsteen is playing in Cincinnati. You know what tickets cost to see Bruce Springsteen on the floor? $5,000. Old people have $5,000 to spend on Bruce Springsteen. Now, the reason they're doing this is that, look, we're sick and tired of having these tickets cost $800 and the scalpers sell them for $5,000. F it. We're just going to charge $5,000 for them and keep the money ourselves. Now, would I spend $5,000 to see Bruce Springsteen? No. But somebody will. And somebody who has the money will. Somebody who doesn't spend money on going to the movies or some dopey restaurant. Okay? There's lots of opportunities out there. There's lots of things everybody can do to bring up a smile. And again, this isn't just the old folks. This isn't just the boomer crowd. This is everybody. Okay? Everybody has frustration. These are pessimistic times for everybody, not just boomers. Okay? They're pessimistic times for anybody. And anybody can use this glass half full theory. Doing what you want, when you want, and spending the money how you want. And just, you can just substitute what I think is fine for you. You don't like wine, you like beer instead, fine. Apply it to beer. Beer's cheap if you look at it that in the right way. You don't have to drink a case of beer to be happy. You can drink 1 or 2 beers and be happy. Okay, lots of good microbrews out there that you may like. Now, are you skeptical about what I'm saying? Okay, you're just trying to paint a rosy picture on a world that's gone to hell. Here's what I would suggest you do. Go to Trader Joe's. Slap down $6.99 for the Epicuro Primitivo that I described. Chill it to 61 degrees. Sit in a comfy chair and sip it with some cheese and sausage and plot out a plan to smile more while sipping the wine and sidestepping the people that don't care about you, that don't care about what you think, don't care about how you believe. Just return the favor, folks. After a glass or two of that wine, you'll kind of agree with me. There's no need to be mean. There's no need to be hateful. I wasn't mean or hateful to the guy at Enterprise Leasing or Enterprise Rental Car. In fact, I said, well, since you asked, let me answer your question. Just simply return the favor. They have no interest in what you think. There's no reason for you to have an interest in them as well. No need to be mean. No need to be hateful. Simply return the favor. Well, that's it. I'm done. Hope you enjoyed the podcast. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's the email address. Send me your email. And I will send you a link to the podcast. You can download it and listen to it at your leisure. Or if you like, just go ahead and use any of the umpteen bajillion different places out there to download your podcast. I talked earlier in the podcast the ways you can do it. Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, TuneIn, Spotify, GeoSavan, iHeartRadio, CastBox, Bullhorn, Google Podcasts, Alexa Media, iTunes, Pocket Casts, Amazon Music, Audible.com, Firefox, VLC, Podbean, Android browser, and others. Those are sources that people have used to download the James Strong podcast in the last year. You can do it too. That's it. Hey, send me your email. I'd love to hear what you have to think. I'd love to hear from the listeners. Love to hear what you think. I do respond to all my emails, believe it or not. JamesStrongShow@hotmail.com. That's it. Until next time, this is James Strong saying adios.